So I would like to talk to you about the metadata and open data portals, but not in the sector in your countries, European countries, but in the sector of development. I'm a data scientist, so I would like to highlight, to you pretty much what I do in my line of work, and also the observations that I gathered through my research. So at development initiatives, what we are working on is the use of data to drive poverty eradication and sustainable development. Our vision is a world without poverty, where everyone shares the benefits of opportunity and growth, and where that world invests in human security. In other words, we believe in data for good. So in my line of work, what I do, I would try to gather information on, I should have probably moved that. So what I would do is I would gather information on, for example, where the poorest people are, what their needs are, what sort of data I have at hand on their socioeconomic needs. But also I would, for example, look at international financial systems and support that is available to a given developing countries. Or we would look at, for example, how monitor the progress of a given developing countries and write reports, discussion papers, and blogs, which we love to do. So my data analysis, all this gathering of information takes me to different places for the data sources, and often that takes me to data portals. And throughout my research, and I have been in this job for 2 years, I find that actually joining up different data and information from different sources can help you see a given development problem in its entirety, and help you as well highlight solutions, potential solutions. All right, so the Millennium Development Goals, which were the past goals, saw the proliferation of open data portals in the developing countries. Here you have a map which is taken from the Open Data Inception portal, where they gathered information on over 2,600 data portals. And the reason for why those data portals were set up in those developing countries were either to monitor progress, and they were set up, majority of them were set up by international agencies, or to disseminate to a broader public data published by national statistical offices. However, now we are entering the implementation phase of Sustainable Development Goals, and there are many more goals than there were of the Millennium Development Goals, Millennium Development MDGs, as we call them, and that will see a further push for data portals in the developing world. So the W3C, Data on the Web Best Practices, encourages publishers to couple data with metadata at the time of publication. In doing so, the metadata can help you establish whether or not you can trust the data that you're looking at. I know here that I'm preaching to a converted, but this is not a message that is really shared across the world, rather than only people within this room. And this question of trust is really important, especially when more and more data is being published openly. But beyond the question of trust, this lack of metadata becomes problematic when you're, for example, trying, in my line of work, trying to find related data sets, or you try to compare different data sets. How can you, for example, compare and be confident in your comparison of data sets from two data sources or two data portals which deal with the same sector or the same location if the basic set of information about that data is not available? And when the metadata, in majority of those instances, is available, it's either incomplete or it's inconsistent. And this metadata is being published to different standards, formats, and to different schemas, which is usually dictated by the choice of platform that is used by Open Data Portal, or lack of thereof, because sometimes these are in-house as well data portals. The Principle 4 of Open Data Charter tells us that open data should be interoperable and comparable as a principle. For open data portals, this translates into those data portals to be interoperable across them and within the data sets that they actually harbor as well. It is not enough now to publish data. The data needs to be easy to use and to discover. This slide shows you some ways of how you can actually address the lack of interoperability between metadata schema. Sebastian talked to you about the DCAT AP, which is the application profile when you have the core elements and structures intact. There is as well derivation where the new schema is based on one which is already existing one, or you can do the crosswalks, which are machine-readable links that can map different elements of metadata to help you do some machine-readable walks between them, and to assist at the end of the day in your analysis. I really like, by the way, the Open Data Interoperability Platform, which is, I believe, is published by the EU, which pretty much sums up what a person like me needs, which is a single entry point, right, where through a single query, you can actually search across different open data portals. But that works in Europe, and this is because open data portals in Europe are mostly based in DCAT, which is then easier actually to make this, this harvester, really, because that's what it is, to work. So in conclusion, this is short and sweet. The interoperability of data portals means that publishers increase discoverability and reuse of their data, that users can uniformly search across platforms without facing difficulties caused by the use of separate models or schema or language differences. And most importantly, that data users can find relevant data sets easier and quicker. In light of sustainable development goals and the data needed for the analysis and joining up of those different data sources to make this holistic picture of what is going on the problems, it is worrisome that even some of those in the developing countries, some of the best practice portals are indeed silos of disconnected and largely unused data. For the data to do good, it needs to be connected, useful, and usable. To use the language analogy that we love to use in our Joined Up Data Standards project, you either should speak the same language or you should get a translator, which is pretty much those short-term solutions that I have presented to you on my previous slide. But for people like me, what we really need is a standardized way of publishing metadata by the Open Data Portal, and in a complete way as well, so that you can establish trust through context of the data, and that you can search through many of the open data portals and discover new data sets through one single query. So thank you very much.